It is a big idea, a new world order, where diverse nations are drawn together in common cause to achieve the universal aspirations of mankind.
President Bush charted U.S. policies that promoted Eastern Europe's peaceful emergence from communism, the fall of the Berlin Wall, the breakup of the Soviet Union, and the end of U.S.-Soviet proxy wars in Nicaragua and El Salvador.
Some have felt that we were so infatuated with the change in Eastern Europe that we are in a process of neglecting this hemisphere, and that is not the case.
President Bush used U.S. military power to remove a drug-dealing strongman, Manuel Noriega, who was turning Panama into a narco state.
Hey, good luck to you, fellas.
And in what at the time was the biggest U.S. military operation since the Vietnam War, President Bush put together an international coalition that liberated Kuwait after it had been invaded by Saddam Hussein's Iraq.
The skies over Baghdad have been illuminated.
After just over 5 weeks of aerial bombardment, coalition ground forces pushed the Iraqi army out of Kuwait in just 3 days.
We stood our ground because the world would not look the other way. Ambassador El-Sabah, tonight, Kuwait is free.
The Gulf War started just after Time magazine declared George Bush its Men of the Year. The cover, the two George Bushes, still sums up his presidency. The uplifting world leader on the international stage, and the one in Washington, D.C., weighed down by a sputtering economy and D.C.'s endless political wars. President Bush tried to be bipartisan from day one.
I'm putting out my hand to you, Mr. Speaker. I'm putting out my hand to you, Mr. Majority Leader.
Democrats, who controlled both houses of Congress and sometimes even his fellow Republicans, slapped that hand away. Alarmed by then record deficits, the president broke his most memorable campaign promise.
Read my lips. No new taxes.
Convinced it was in the national interest to compromise, he agreed to a bipartisan deal cutting spending and raising taxes. He broke a major campaign pledge and then saw the deal shot down by House conservatives. A second attempt passed, but did not stop the recession in time. Bush's nomination of Clarence Thomas to the U.S. Supreme Court provoked another acrimonious fight. Democrats dug up claims of sexual harassment.
This is a circus. It's a national disgrace. And from my standpoint, as a black American, as far as I'm concerned, it is a high-tech lynching for uppity blacks.
And Bush's approval rating, an unheard of 91% by the end of the Gulf War, slowly eroded. The recession he could not stop ended up costing him a second term. But President Bush left indelible marks on the nation as well as on the world. He signed the Clean Air Act of 1990, calling it one of his administration's greatest domestic achievements. He also signed the Americans with Disabilities Act, prohibiting job discrimination and, to this day, opening buildings and public transportation to millions of Americans. It is no wonder that modern presidents from both parties looked up to him.
Mr. President, I'm one of millions of people who've been inspired by your passion and your commitment. We are surely a kinder and gentler nation because of you, and we can't thank you enough.
Jake Tapper, CNN, Washington.
Here in the Mountain State, many local politicians from both parties admired the president as well. 13 News reporter Lily Bradley joins us now live with more on the local reaction to the former president's passing. Lily.
Adrian, as news of the World War II veteran and former president's death spread across the globe, millions began to pay tribute and express gratitude for the life and legacy of the late president. Here in the Mountain State, it was no different. Governor Jim Justice ordered all flags across the state to be flown at half-staff. Many other local politicians here in the capital city remembering the former president and honoring his legacy.
He was just magnificent and well-spoken. Never wanted to talk about himself, though. Always wanted to talk about other things. Time of celebration, but also a time of sadness for us, obviously. He had a wonderful family life, and I personally am better because I knew him. He made me a better person.
Now other tributes pouring in as well. Governor Jim Justice remembering President Bush, saying a great man, a great public servant, and a brave soldier and veteran. Senator Joe Manchin praising the former president as one of the greats in our history, saying in part, President Bush was a man who put country and citizens before party and politics. And then finally, Senator Shelley Moore Capito saying, quote, he was an incredible public servant, statesman, and American. He loved this country and spent his entire life working to protect and promote the principles and ideas we value most.